I wanted to show everybody a method I came up with for making what I think is a decent mask. This will work well for pollen. Also should work okay for keeping droplets out of your mouth and nose, which is something everyone might be worried about right now. Coronavirus. This one is for my wife. I'll show you how these fit. I'll show you the stuff you need. So these ones feature an inner layer of HEPA filtering material, stretchy cord, stretchy bandana material for most of it, and it's pretty comfortable. So it also seals pretty well at the nose, well enough that if I put my glasses back on, they don't fog too much. Which of course means there's not much air coming up, which means there's not much air going down and in. The materials you need for this are pretty simple. Starts out with cheap, stretchy bandana material. You can order these like 6, 12, for $10 on Amazon. And they come in an assortment of colors usually. And each one of these will make 3 masks, so you don't need a whole pile of them. The other thing you're going to need is some filtering material. This is one sheet of MERV 12 or Home Depot rating 10 HEPA level, so not HEPA level, HVAC rating material. This is from a simple flat panel HVAC filter, the kind that are pleated. You can see the pleats used to be in there. So I had to take it apart, peel off the little bit of metal that's on there, and I'm not sure this will show up on the video, but you could see like some little fiberglass threads and a matrix on there, and those hold the material. They make it a little bit scratchy sometimes on the edges, but it's okay. I have this material in there because it should filter out everything down to the size of droplets that can carry viruses. It's not going to filter out viruses, but you're not going to have aerosolized viruses floating around. This will stop everything down to pollen and those tiny little droplets and even larger smog particles. One filter like this is about $18, but it is enough for probably 20-30 masks. I haven't done the math yet. And then the next thing you need after that, or the final thing really, for sealing the nose is this stuff, soft garden tie it's called, although why? It's backwards on the screen right now. It's beyond me. It's like I'm looking in a mirror. And this is just bendy stuff covered in plastic, and this is to give you a spot up here that seals to your nose. The trick with this stuff is when you cut it, you need to kind of pull the plastic ends in so that the wire is protruding, snip that wire so that the wire ends up being a little bit shorter inside than the plastic, and then you flame the ends with a lighter. Probably demonstrate this later. You'll flame the ends and pinch them together, and that way you won't be so likely to get a little sharp piece of metal poking near your eye, which would be a bummer. And then this stuff, once it's bent, it's like a twist tie. It keeps its shape. You don't want to bend it a billion times. It'll eventually break inside there, but that should work out. So let's get to some cutting, sewing, and flaming and ends and so forth, and you can see the process. And I forgot, but that's the magic of editing film later, or video. One more thing you'll need is some kind of cord. You could use non-elastic cord for this if you needed to, just tie it around the ends. Even just shoelaces or anything you could come by would work. I happen to have a bunch of stretchy elastic that I use for various gear making projects. This stuff is like 2mm or 1/16 of an inch, and it works pretty well for this. Step one, you're just going to want to cut a bunch of this stuff to as many pieces as you think you're going to make masks. So this piece is about 4 inches. The length isn't crucial. 3 will probably do it. I just measure off the one I already cut, and I cut the lengths with my, and this is my cutter that I use for cutting bicycle spokes when I'm making bike wheels. And then the trick here to avoid getting hurt, in my opinion, is that you can see here, I think, there's a little bit of wire protruding right there, and that you don't want that to scratch your eye. So what I do is I take the pliers and I make just a small hole with them like that, and I press so that I've got that little piece of wire poking through, and I cut about 1/8 of an inch off each end, and I press this side, cut it, and then what I've got now is, if it'll show, see that the wire is inside there, so it's not all the way up to the end. And then there's one more step, which is I flame the ends with the lighter. Doesn't take much, just let it start a little bit on fire, smoke a little. That's enough. And this stuff is great. It's not hot enough to actually even sting my fingers, but it is melted enough that you can stick it together and it'll hold like that. That means that wire isn't likely to poke through and poke you in the face. Also, since you're probably going to want to wash these, or at least soak them in a light bleach solution once in a while to sanitize them, this will keep water away from that wire in there so that it doesn't rust and go bad before it's time. So it's pretty simple. I would just make a whole pile of these all at once, so you've got them available for the later steps in making the mask. Okay, you can see I've got quite a mess on the cutting table here. This is a rotary cutting table, but this material doesn't like to be cut with a rotary cutter. So I don't use the rotary cutter on it. I just cut it with the scissors. This stuff doesn't fray very much on the edges when it's cut, so you don't have to hem the edges very much. What I do is like I said, you can get 3 masks out of one of these pieces. So this is the orangish color my daughter wanted her masks made of. So I just sort of fold it in thirds. The precise size is not all that important. Fold it in thirds, turn it so I can get a comfortable pull on it with my scissors, and then just sort of carefully cut without making too big a mess. Right, you've got one. And now we have three mask bases. So I'm very lucky. My wife and kid got me a serger a couple years ago for Christmas, which I didn't know I would need or want, but it works very well for some parts of the sewing process. This is a spot where it works really well. You can do this with a regular sewing machine. You could even do it by hand if you needed to. It'll certainly go much more quickly with a serger. The stitch on the serger is naturally stretchy in the direction that we're going to do it, so that is helpful. If you're using a regular sewing machine, you're going to want to use one of the stitches on that machine that will stretch a little bit instead of popping the seams. And so you're going to turn it inside out. Oh, by the way, if you're on your serger, you can see the settings down here. I have it set on the stretch setting because it is going to, the feed dogs are going to be pulling on the fabric, so you need to have them pulling a little bit more than just kind of the one-to-one relationship with the stitch. The serger makes that easy to do. Fancier sewing machines also do that, I'm sure. Our sewing machine isn't fancy. Neither is the serger, but the serger does do this. So pretty much I'm just going to put a 4-thread lock stitch over the edge of the inside here. And I get the paddle set, and my tensions aren't set perfect here, but they're good enough. And I do have the knife going, so it'll trim off the edge here. And I don't go crazy fast on the serger because this is a very flimsy table and it jumps all over anyway. So cut off the tails a little bit. Those are going to be on the inside. And that is your top seam, and you can see that it is stretchy enough that it'll work. So we're going to do a little bit of work with this inside out, but the next step in the process is actually turning it right side in like this, and then we're going to fold these edges over like this and sew them just a straight line, boop, boop, across there, so that we have a channel in here, and that's where the cord is going to pass on each side of the mask. I'm going to switch to a different partially made one, because this one's partially made, because I happen to have pink thread in the sewing machine over there, and I want to match the thread colors because I'm type A that way. Alright, time to do a little edge sewing here for the channels for the elastic. I have this about 20 millimeters, or 3/4 of an inch. It can be a little bit less, it can be a little bit more. You don't have to clip it or pin it as I have. If you can do it freehand, it's not crucial. If it's a little crooked, it won't matter because this is all going to be bunched up when you put the mask on later. We're making the channel that the elastic goes through, and when it's on your face, of course, it looks like that. It's all closed up like a sphincter a little bit. So, not crucial. I use a straight stitch for this mostly. I don't use it too long a stitch, and I try to get a stitch lock at the beginning, but this material is really tricky to move back and forth with the feed dogs. If you have top and bottom feed dogs, that might be more helpful for this stuff. It wants to bunch. In fact, let me put those on and see if that works better. So I've got the quilting foot, or whatever it is called here. I haven't had it on the machine for a while. This is my wife's machine actually, so I'll just struggle putting it on video because everybody likes to watch an idiot not get stuff done right. So there we go. Get it on, kind of. Now we need to get the set screw in there. My left hand, not left-handed. I'm not left-dexterous, but that is on. And we'll see if that helps. Let's try some scrap fabric here and make sure everything is working. Looks, it's working okay. So we'll go back to our real material. Okay, going to set up here again, straight stitch. Got my thing lined up there. I'm going to take out that clip, and I'm going to hope that using the top and bottom feet makes this a little bit more predictable on the feeding. Oh yeah, way better. Go backwards to lock that stitch. Okay. Oh yeah, that much better. You know, after the 6th or 7th time. finally pull your head out of your rectum and improve a little. Sometimes at the end I like to give it a little zigzag, but I don't think I need to here. Just going to lock that and boom, snippy snippy, and we're looking at, that looks decent. And we'll just do the other side exactly the same. So this is the other side. I'm just going to eyeball it to show you how badly that can go when you get cocky and you don't think you need to follow regular sewing protocols. But again, since this mask is all bunched up at the end, even sloppy work here will not show at all. So I'll start there. And it bunched up like crazy there. I'll give it a little zigzag here on the way out. And that takes care of that. Totally asymmetrical, but again, it won't matter once it is on the face. And the next step here is cutting some filter fabric. And again, this is not, the size here isn't crucial. In fact, I like to make it a little bit oversized because then it sort of accordions up inside here, or it stretches. You can see this stuff doesn't stretch. This does. So you want this to be longer than the interior of this, so that when it's not stretched, it's doing this inside, and then when it's stretched, it's still doing that. It's not getting pulled on. So I make this stuff a little bit longer than the seam to seam distance. Since we have stretch built into this design, both with the mask itself and the elastics, it's not crucial, but so we'll make this. What I usually do, actually, I'm not thinking straight here, is I make it as long as the pre-cut bandana. So be a good online nickname, pre-cut bandana. And here's where the little fiberglass grid reinforcement is helpful, because it can help you cut a semi-straight line. So now we have a piece of filter fabric that is big enough to handle some stretch and then some, and we're going to put it inside. The way we're going to do that is opening it up, and I'll show you the theory here before I do the actual work. The theory, this might even be a little too long, but I'll put it in anyway. The theory is we're tacking it down so that we don't sew it all the way across so that it can't stretch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack the middle down here, then I'll pull these in, and I will tack the ends, tack like that, so that then when it's stretched, the material will move in there, but it won't move around inside, and it'll keep you covered and keep filtering pretty well. So that'll be the next step on the sewing machine. Okay, you need to take this part of the base off your sewing machine, because you need to be able to thread the bandana on a little bit like that. Come here, thread, go through the right way so you don't bother me. Okay. And I like to start by tacking the middle of these. So, and these stitches in here, by the way, I actually do them kind of loose, almost like basting stitches, and I do not even lock them very much, because I feel like maybe this material might get ruined, and I might want to just snip it out and replace it at some point. So I don't seal the bandanas up 100% on the bottom, and I don't bother sewing this down super carefully, because it's just meant to keep it from sliding around when you're taking the thing on and off. Actually, I'm kind of an idiot. My procedure on the top tack, I've forgotten, is always to just tack it right on to the there to the overlocked. Try and get it sort of even to the overlocked bit. So got it set on 3 here. For the stitch length, and then that's our first tack right there. So just kind of tacked in the middle. Now pull that corner out. I'll tack this end, and you can see it's going to gap up like that. That is how it's supposed to be. So we'll just give this a little tack. And that one's done over there. And then this side over here. So you can see that if you had a assembly line of a few people working on this, you can make a lot of these fairly quickly. Whoops. Didn't have enough of a tail on my thread and it pulled out. By the way, this material, I can't vouch for the total N95-ness or whatever of it. It's certainly going to be better than nothing at all. I also tested it. I soaked it in a bleach solution for quite a while to see if that would, melt it or anything. And there wasn't any obvious damage. Again, this is HVAC material. I cannot vouch for it as a protective material, but I think it's obviously going to be more protective than nothing. And it seemed that it stood up very well to the bleach bath, and so do these bandanas, by the way, as long as the bleach isn't super strong. So the recommendation I have on these is, yes, you can reuse them as much as you need to. If you feel like you need to sanitize it because you've been breathing warm air into it for a long time and you don't want it to be full of disgusting mold or whatever from that, go ahead and soak it in a light bleach solution and for a while, and then just let it air dry, better yet in the sun, because that UV will kill lots of stuff too, and then you can wear it again. So I tack the bottom similarly before I tack the middle. I try to get it a little bit in from the cut edge. Again, not being super careful. It's just to hold it, to keep it from wandering. Do the far side here and set a little from the edge. Snippy, snippy. And then the middle down here. So we've tacked the top and bottom in 3 places. Which means that the inner material cannot really bunch up and refuse to do coverage, right? If we flip it back inside out, you'll see that it's going to be a little fluffy, and pull it like this. So the material is going to cover your face kind of no matter what here. It can't really get too lazy. How lazy can it get at the top? Well, it's getting a little lazy here from this corner. Did I not get that corner done properly? Oh, I'm an idiot. Somehow I didn't tack the corner there. I tacked the middle. So I'm just gonna snip that and get a better tack there. I don't know why. I guess I didn't have these pulled out enough. That one's a little better. I'm going to do a little extra tack up here since I didn't do a great job there. Come on, you. This gets kind of thick, so it doesn't want to pull under in some cases. There. Don't want to tack down my passages for the where the elastic goes. So there you are. Again, better seamsters and more people would make this process go faster. So again, you need to get corner to corner. I wasn't quite close enough with the corner there, so I was gapping a little more than I would like. All right. Now that corner is good. And as a final bit, if you want, you can do a bit on the sides here so that it can't gap over like that. And that's not too tough. Just get it on. Pull your material and get toward the seam, and then make sure that you feel where your side passage is under there so that you don't sew that closed, or you won't be able to get your elastic through. Oh, come on. Forgot to pull the thread again. I'll get this through here too. Come on, you. Okay. Through here. All right. One side. And do the other, and then we'll cut a bunch of, trim a bunch of threads after that. And then there'll only be 2 more steps: putting on the elastic and putting in the nose piece. All right, middle side again. Now again, here you can tack it this direction, doesn't really matter. You're just holding it in that spot so that it doesn't wander too much when you're taking the thing on and off. All right, there it is. Okay, now I'm going to close the bottom here, but I don't enclose the whole thing because, like I said, I might want to replace this filter material, or maybe I need to, actually I'm going to need to insert the nose piece. Can do that now or later. I'm going to do it later. So I just pretty much tack it again in the middle, and that holds it well enough. So I'm going to do a little narrower stitch, a little bit longer, but enough that it'll be easy to remove if I need to. You can see that it'll look a little rustic on the bottom, but it makes it much easier to get in and out if you need to do any repair work or anything. Now it's going to be time to insert one of these nose pieces. You're going to want to set your machine onto a wide zigzag. I put it on the widest zigzag I've got. And you're going to approach this from the outside of the mask. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, which side you put it on. So this is where you can insert this up through here because you've got those openings. And not a crucial thing you need to measure or anything. You just mostly want to center it. So you can sort of feel it. You can kind of use your fingers to get it mostly centered. And then I don't like to put it all the way up on the edge, or my zigzag doesn't really work. So you kind of work it down to about 15 centimeters, half an inch or so away from the top edge. And then, like an idiot, you pull the thread out of your machine. Alright, so I've got the nose piece, a piece of coated wire, kind of running straight down the center here. And I'm going to make sure my zigzag goes across and put the foot down, and it's going to want to kind of ski on and off like a water skier on a wake or something. So it's a little tricky to do this, but luckily, again, it's not super crucial. You're just trying to get enough zigzags. You're going to basically go on chunk, 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 chunk over it. You just want to get enough zigzags over it so that it doesn't wander. And you can test if you're going to be able to do it by using the hand wheel. I've done that yesterday. Things seem to be working okay, so I'm going to back up and lock that a little. I'm actually going to lengthen this to 3 so that it's a longer zigzag, because it doesn't need to be tight, it just needs to hold this in. And I can feel it trying to wander. Back it up, lock it, and now that went pretty well. And the good thing about a very long, wide zigzag stitch is that it stretches as well. So now you can see that the nose piece is in there, and you'll be able to seal the top up nicely so that you keep air out, or for me it's really more about keeping air in. Your hot breath doesn't pop up and fog your glasses. Now it's time for the last step, and we'll try it on. The last step is putting in the elastic. I like to thread it from the bottom up one side, round and down. And this stuff is really stretchy. I found myself using less and less of it. So you can kind of eyeball how much you need, but basically you just need a small loop here and a small loop there, and that'll be more than enough to fit around your head unless you're under the giant. So I use these tweezers that are for threading the serger. They work pretty well for holding the elastic as I push it through the sides, and this is why, you can see it came right out. This is why you want to leave these sides nice and loose. It makes it a lot easier to thread your elastic or string through. And well, on the other side, do the same thing. Grab that. Feed, 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 feed. When those are tight, I've made them too tight on some of the others. They bind and they make this part a pain in the butt. So there you have it. Now, like I said, I find that if I just have a loose loop of this much on either side. That's enough to go around the head because the fabric stretches and this stuff is really, really stretchy. So you don't need a lot. So, and I just tie a loop around. So I'm just gonna, if you give it a little extra, you'll have some slack to play with. You're gonna wanna flame the ends of these if they're synthetics. And then I just tie an overhand knot and leave it like that. It's easy enough to untie if you need to adjust it later. And pretty much there is the finished product. And we'll try it on and see how it works. Alright, well, the mask we just made, I like to put the loop end that's on the down side. It goes behind the neck, and this elastic feels a little shorter than usual, but that's okay. Then I'll just make the thing tighter. So just put it on. We haven't bent the nose piece yet on this. I'll bend that down around my big schnoz, get it to fit. The top piece you can actually wear on top of your head. It'll stay pretty well, or just over your ears. And there you can see it's pretty tight fitting. And I can push that nose stuff in. You can see my disgusting crooked eyes and nose here, but just trying to show you that the seal there works pretty well. You can talk through this. It's going to get a little warm and moist. If you run your fingers over it, I had put it so that the little fiberglass material on the HEPA material is on the outside. That is a little bit pokey and scratchy sometimes. Not enough that I think you care. Let's check, see how the glasses fogging works. Barely any, which is way better than the first ones I made. So there you have it. Make an assembly line. You could probably make these if you were in a real pinch in a healthcare facility. I think these would be a lot better than nothing. If you're just somebody who wants to walk around and avoid breathing in people's spit gobs, I think this works pretty well. It's going to get moist and humid in here. So at the end of the day, probably a good idea to give it a little soak in a light bleach water and then let it go. I can't vouch for virus effectiveness, but it's got to be better than nothing or just plain bandana. And it's pretty comfy. So there you go.